Hey there, friends. Welcome to Just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and you know, there are a lot of JRPGs coming out in the year 2023. Now, if you're like me, you are more than willing to take out a second mortgage on your house in order to afford all of these JRPGs. However, if you're smarter than me, you're going to want to be a little more choosy. That's why I put together my list of the top 5 upcoming JRPGs that I'm looking forward to in 2023. Before we get started though, I would just ask that you please like the video, please subscribe to the channel, it really helps me out a lot to know you're out there, and buckle in. Right, Iba?
Yes, buckle in to your nerdy video about silly video games. Sounds super exciting, not boring at all.
I swear, she's only like this when the camera's on. She is a complete sweetheart. 2022 gave us so many fantastic JRPGs that I don't think it would shock anyone if 2023 was a little on the lighter side. I'm happy to say that nothing could be further from the truth. If anything, 2023 is even more loaded with JRPGs, to the point that I've already begun to mourn for my wallet. Alas, poor Exter, I knew thee well. Oh, I love how it does that. Such a cool wallet. Makes shopping fun. There's a wealth of videos out there laying out in finest detail every single JRPG that's scheduled to hit our shores this year, so I'll leave it to folks like the Gaming Shelf to give you that. I want to focus today on the 5 JRPGs that stick out to me as the must-plays of the year. If you're on a limited gaming budget, these are the ones that I think will be worth your hard-earned dollars. Final Fantasy VII Remake was an extraordinary game. What was pitched as an episodic remake of a classic 90s JRPG turned out to actually be something of a continuation. Think of remake as not a descriptor of the game, but as a subtitle, conveying the actions that the characters are taking. It makes more sense that way. The story finally continues with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I could not be more hyped. Final Fantasy VII has grown into one of my all-time favorite games over the years, and seeing this much love and attention being paid to these characters all these years later warms me straight to the center of my cold, empty heart. As a bonus, more than just a continuation of the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake, this new title is a current-gen exclusive. Does this mean no more blurry wallpaper city backgrounds? We shall see! I have high hopes for this series as it continues, and while it's far from a certainty that Square Enix will stick the landing, I'm optimistic that things will work out in the end. There are not 1, not 2, but 3 Trails games hitting shelves in North America this year. And while I'm very excited for Trails to Azure and The Legend of Nayuta Boundless Trails, my hype for them is moderated somewhat by the fact that I've already played them both. Admittedly, that was through incredibly subpar rough translation patches, but still, I know the stories. Trails into Reverie, on the other hand, is all new to me. Picking up several months after Trails of Cold Steel 4 leaves off, this game is like the Avengers Endgame to Cold Steel 4's Avengers Infinity War. Get it? Because there were a lot of Avengers in Infinity War, but there were even more in Endgame. It's like there were 28 in Infinity War and like 36 or something, and forget it. Point is, there are more than 50 new and returning characters in Trails into Reverie. That is an almost unmanageably large number of characters. However, if any group of storytellers can handle that number of intertwining stories, it's Falcom. They are the pioneers of the JRPG from the very earliest days of video games, and they've only gotten better over the years. Seriously, just watching the trailer for this game gives me goosebumps. It's an incredible story that just keeps ramping up game after game, and you really don't want to miss it. Viewers of this channel might know that Chrono Trigger is my favorite game of all time. I'd guess that at least some of the developers behind Sea of Stars feel the same way. This game is a gorgeous love letter to classic JRPGs of the 16-bit era, with that 2D aesthetic that's all the rage, coupled with modern conveniences we expect in games today. Like Chrono Trigger, you move around on a world map, you engage in battles with enemies on the same screen, and you get to listen to some tunes by legendary Chrono Trigger composer Yasunori Mitsuda. That's right, Mitsuda is stepping in as a guest composer, which is super exciting, though that's not to discredit the work of Eric W. Brown, the game's main composer, who's coming up with some amazing melodies of his own. The battles look awesome, with tons of special attacks and flashy effects from your party and the monsters you fight. Not only that, but it seems to be implementing some sort of Mario RPG-esque rhythm system, where timed button presses increase your damage, which is a simple idea, but goes a long way toward making battles even more engaging. In a year that's as chock full of JRPGs as 2023 is shaping up to be, it would take a pretty dang impressive indie game to make a list like this. And Sea of Stars is a pretty dang impressive indie game. Octopath Traveler was the first game to make me really sit up and take notice of the Switch's JRPG possibilities. It was one of the earliest games announced for the system, and the visual style was just so unlike anything that had been done before. Of course, now the HD 2D style is in a ton of games, and there's no signs of it stopping anytime soon. But whatever. It's a gorgeous art style, and I'm not going to complain. Somehow, this game's graphics look even better than the originals, which I still think of as a pretty high watermark for presentation. The world is a bit different this time around, a sort of steampunky mishmash of old and new, which is an aesthetic that looks fantastic in this art style. The music is once again by composer Yasunori Nishiki, who has the honor of being my second favorite Yasunori making game music. His compositions are beautiful, moving, they're everything you want JRPG music to be. The story seems to be correcting one of the major complaints with the first game too, namely that the characters in your party don't really interact in meaningful ways, so that's a very big plus. The fact that Octopath Traveler 2 is coming out this year is making me very excited. This one will no longer be a Switch console exclusive, so you can pick it up for the console of your choice, assuming your choice of console is PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. Sorry, once again, Xbox fans, but look, I'm gonna be real. If you're an enormous JRPG fan and you own an Xbox, you also own a PlayStation or a Switch. That's a fact. End of sentence. We don't have too long to wait for this one. It's set to come out at the end of February. But when a game looks this good, a month can seem like an eternity. This is it, folks. Final Fantasy's much anticipated return to the fantasy its name implies. I'll be perfectly honest, I've never been a huge fan of traditional fantasy. The tropes get on my nerves, I can't figure out why everyone is speaking with an affected faux British accent, the settings feel so samey. So when Final Fantasy XVI was announced as this return to form in a high fantasy sense, I was initially pretty disinterested. In part because of what I just said, and in part because to say Final Fantasy's roots is high fantasy is to ignore the robots and spaceships and time travel that go all the way through the series back to the very first entry. My feelings changed with the most recent trailer. I think that, combined with my latent childhood love of the series finally waking up after the long nap it takes between games, has gotten me pretty hyped. While some might lament the loss of traditional turn-based combat in the Final Fantasy series, I'm not too bothered by it. There are a ton of great games to carry the turn-based torch. The action in Final Fantasy XVI looks insane. The introduction of party members eased one of my primary concerns, that this was going to be a solo effort, sort of a Devil May Cry meets Game of Thrones thing. Also, there's a dog. You have a dog. Must love dogs. Even with all the trailers and information that's been released, the story is still pretty well under wraps, and even what has been released to the public, I've avoided. I already know I'm going to get it, so I want to be as unspoiled as possible. What I do know is that you control Clive, the bodyguard to his younger brother Joshua, who apparently has control of the Phoenix Acon. Acon? Icon? Some bad stuff happens, Ifrit shows up, and Clive is on the hunt for revenge. Look, whatever happens in the story, Final Fantasy XVI is looking crazy good, and I'm getting super excited about it. Assuming it doesn't get pushed back again, knock on wood, we'll be able to crack into it come June 22nd. So that's my list. What do you think? Do your top 5 JRPGs coming out in 2023 look anything like mine? Let me know in the comments below. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, I would just ask that you like the video and subscribe. And until next time, bye.